I'm Jim Kircher. If you're ever looking to get up a little early to see something special, you might think about Cahokia Mounds at sunrise. The fall equinox, I'm told, is the most dramatic because of how the sun lines up with the big mound, and it's not nearly as early as the summer solstice sunrise that we went to see. And while Cahokia is all about ancient history, just as interesting is the recent history, what we've discovered in just a matter of decades, and the new technologies that are being used to help make those discoveries. They start showing up just after 5 a.m. at the reconstructed circle of posts called Woodhenge, at the ancient city known today as Cahokia Mounds. This is the first day of summer, and that's why they've come.
Just to celebrate the solstice the same way that the old people used to.
Just something we wanted to do before we pass on.
The man with the stepladder is Bill Eisminger, site manager of the Cahokia Mounds State Historic Site. He gives a talk here every solstice and equinox at this solar calendar built to mark the seasons and the rising sun.
First of all, for those who are not that familiar with our site, this is the largest prehistoric Indian settlement in America, the largest north of Mexico.
And about 60 people showed up for this 5:20 sunrise. It's likely a lot more than that witnessed the sunrise at this place 1,000 years ago.
So we use the term city when we talk about Cahokia because it was so much bigger than anything else at that time, or even for a long time after that. Covered about 6 square miles, had around 120 mounds here, and at its peak maybe anywhere from 10 to 20,000 people. Excavations that have gone on at this site over the years, if you put them all together, probably less than 1% of the site's been excavated, but when you think about how big the site is.
There are a lot of mysteries in this place. This Mississippian metropolis was abandoned long before European explorers arrived to discover one giant earthen mound and many smaller ones. Over time, some of the mounds were destroyed, artifacts were taken, fields were plowed, roads and highways and subdivisions were built. Serious site preservation and archaeological study really didn't get underway here until the 1960s. And now every year, you'll find archaeological teams digging, searching, putting together the pieces of a very large and complex physical, social, and political puzzle with no written or direct oral history to guide them. It is steady work.
Well, my eyes are always just searching the landscape.
John Kelly has been digging here for nearly 50 years.
So from basically the early 60s and up to today, working here, and there are other institutions, there's been continuous work. I wouldn't say there's probably hasn't been a year in which there hasn't been some kind of excavations being done at the site.
And the knowledge has given us a much clearer picture of this city, the physical layout, the structures, the neighborhoods, and the people, from the great chief on the big mound to those who lived and worked throughout the city. And yet there's so much more to find, and there are new ways to find it. A team funded by the National Geographic Society was here surveying a field near the big mound with a magnetometer, which will indicate features below ground where soil has been disturbed, say for the building of a house or a sweat lodge.
And this technology will basically pick up differences in magnetic properties to see where humans were altering the soils. We can also use techniques like ground penetrating radar, or GPR, and we did do a small section earlier this week of GPR.
At another dig directed by St. Louis University professor Mary Vermillion, they did an electrical resistance survey. Probes run a current through the ground, and variations in electrical resistance produce a map and a pretty good idea of where you should dig.
This is the sweat lodge. Yeah. So that's pretty spectacular. You can see it's 3 meters in diameter.
How much of this kind of technology is changing what archaeologists do and how they do it?
No, it's changing it drastically, and now more and more before we start excavating, to be able to help us place where our excavation units are, to save time, to save labor.
Archaeologists still use shovels and trowels and brushes, but they can now look into the ground before they dig.
But go around, just look along the edge.
John Kelly for years has been concentrating on mapping the stockade wall that once enclosed the big mound and its plazas.
But I think the most important thing for me as an archaeologist is actually seeing the way in which communities were laid out, but also how that space relates to their cosmology.
More than likely, the leader on top was thought to be related to or brother of the sun. To have the sky brother coming out of his mound would reinforce his authority and power and his connection with the upper world and the forces associated with that. A lot of questions we have about Cahokia and what happened here, and through controlled excavations we hope to answer a lot of those questions.